My name is Jim DiDonato, and I am the director of the Round Lake Area Library. I would like to extend a huge debt of gratitude for all of our partners this afternoon. We have the Lake County League of Women Voters, WRLR 98.3 FM, and Mono a Mono Family Resource Center. Please note that the Candidates Forum this afternoon is designed to provide residents information from primary sources on your way to becoming an informed electorate, which is part of the library's mission to provide current information, formal education support, independent learning opportunities, and life enrichment materials to a highly diverse public. The Cultural and Civic Center has provided the Round Lake Area Library free use of this space. The Civic Center staff have been nothing but pleasant and encouraging to work with, and I do highly recommend them for use for any social, work-related, conferences, or community events. The staff here are fantastic, and thank you for their help. I would also like to extend a huge gratitude towards the Lake County League of Women Voters, especially Diane Sanderson and Lori Miller, who will be today's moderator. Both have been instrumental in coordinating and setting up this event. WRLR 98.3 FM is broadcasting this event live and will also rebroadcast, and I will give you the schedule at the end of my introduction. I would also like to extend a huge thank you to Mono a Mono Family Resource Center, who provides citizenship resources and services to residents of Lake County. A huge set of gratitude goes out to Megan McKenna, the director of Mono a Mono, for coordinating Mono a Mono's support for translation services today. Thank you, Mono a Mono. Our candidates, we know that it takes time, effort, energy, resources, family help, and a lot of heart to go into the races. So thank you very much to all of you for running for leadership positions within our county. Final group that I would like to say thank you to is all of you who are attending today. Without you, we would not have leaders elected for public office. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day, for stepping away from ball games and family to come out and join us this afternoon. Please know that this event is designed to provide residents an opportunity to get a first-person response from candidates. This event is for everyone, and it is expected that everyone will be respectful to others and to avoid argumentative tones in this discussion. I would also like to state that everyone has the right to hear what each candidate has to say, and that we do ask that you keep your comments to the end of the debate so that everyone has a chance to hear what other candidates have to say. Finally, this is a nonpartisan activity presented by nonpartisan organizations. None of the organizations hosting this event support any candidates or ballot issue. The opinions of any candidates do not reflect the views of the organizations participating in this event. And candidates from contested races, all candidates from contested races in today's event were invited to participate in the debate. So at this time, I would like to introduce Lori Miller as our moderator for today. Lori is the past president and active member of the nonpartisan Wheaton League of Women Voters, serving as deputy voter registrar for 24 years. She's coordinated numerous voter registration drive and community events at the Page County High School, contributed and overseen high school mock elections, engaged citizens to get registered to vote, to get educated on issues, and to get involved in their democracy. Lori is a sought-after moderator for many congressional, state, local, and political forums. Lori has a degree in finances and also a master's degree in management and information services. Thank you very much, Lori.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today. And you have such a beautiful county. Lake County is just, it's a gem, and it's definitely a treasure. And I'm delighted that so many of you are sharing your afternoon with us today to hear about all those that are willing to step forward and serve you in this capacity. And as you know, tomorrow is the first day to take advantage of early voting, and that is important. And this is the first year you can take advantage of provisional voting. That means if you missed the opportunity to register to vote, maybe you changed your name, maybe you moved, you still have an opportunity to vote and change that on election day. So do keep that in mind. And the League, as you know, is a nonpartisan organization We are a very diverse group of, we love men, we love women, we love active, engaged citizens that are working to protect our democracy. So truly, we do respect and ask in advance you to silence your cell phones, and that you do hear each other and ask your questions. At the grassroots is where the league is most successful. This is your chance to really engage, and we're going to have a conversation today and really communicate about what's important. As a disinterested person, that means that doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I don't know, I'm not down into the weeds of all your real issues facing you. I'm in a different county, I can't vote in your election. So we want to make sure it's transparent, it's fair, and the focus is going to be on these candidates today. So thank you again for your respect, for your attention today, and for your thoughtful questions. With that, I'm going to invite our 2 candidates for our first race. We have 5 races today. This is almost as exciting as the Cubs game last night. And of course, the Cubs were successful. Hey, it's been 108 years for that. So this time I'd like to present our 2 candidates for Lake County Recorder of Deeds Office. We have candidate Robert Harridan, and we also have candidate Mary Ellen Vanderventer. And the candidates, the ground rules, you're going to have up to 1.5 minutes to make your opening comments, up to 1 minute to answer each question, and up to 1 minute for closing comments. We get to share 25 minutes for each race today, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask candidate Vanderventer to make your opening comments.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I am delighted to be here today, and I want to thank everyone for our sponsors today for coordinating this important event. I've served as your Lake County Recorder for 20 years, and I'm incredibly proud of all that my staff and I have done. I'm running today on my record of accomplishments and my passion for the job and the people that we serve. As the keeper of history in Lake County, my office manages a library of over 7 million real estate documents, used every day by bankers and lawyers, surveyors, title companies, and law enforcement officials. We continue to upgrade our technology while keeping the old-fashioned traditions of the office alive. Each and every phone call is answered by a real live human being. We've reduced our budget every year since taking office, reduced our head count by 11 people, and we continue to offer courteous and professional service. It's important to remember that none of your tax dollars are collected or used in the operation of the Recorder's Office, and there's not a single task or duty that's performed that's duplicated by any other unit of government. Nobody does the work that we do. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. And now I'd like to ask candidate Vanderbilt and candidate Harridan, your opening comments.
Yes, hi, I'm Dr. Robert Harridan. I'm a longtime resident of Lake County. I'm a dentist and for 17 years, and I'm very, very familiar with the importance of documents. And I have had several people saying that Mary Ellen has done a very, very good job of what she's doing, and the office is running extremely smooth. But I don't believe that we need to have an elected official running this office. In several counties in the state of Illinois, we have merged this with the clerk's office. I believe that this office can be run by the deputy of the recorder, and we don't need to pay $125,000 a year for this elected position. So in 4 years, we can save $500,000 and on and on. I don't think that we need, as a taxpayer, to pay for this, and my goal is to remove this position in our county, and I think it's very, very important. I went to Libertyville High School. I went to college at Lake County. I went to UIC. I was an engineer for Abbott for 12 years doing research. I became a dentist. I'm very, very well accomplished. I have a lot of experience working with automation, computer software, purchasing software packages, and also our records need to stay very safe, and I think that's the most important, and I think we're going to continue doing that. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, candidate Harridan. At this point, we're going to move forward to prepared in advance lead questions, and we're going to reverse order of answering questions. So, candidate Harridan, we'll start with you first. And thank you for paying attention to our timekeepers in the front row. If you do see the stop sign, we'll let you finish at least your sentence. Thank you. The first question, what past experiences make you uniquely qualified for this position?
Well, as I mentioned in my opening statements, is that I've worked as an electrical engineer and electronics engineer. I've worked with the FDA. I have my own product on the market. I own a company that puts, it's under FDA control. I'm probably the only person that I know of that has a 510K approval of a product. So I understand records, I understand documentation, I also understand software, and I really do understand the requirements it's going to take to make these records to stay safe. And I think it's a real concern for our community.
Thank you. Candidate Vandenbergen?
What was the question? Oh, why am I qualified?
Correct.
Well, I have enjoyed and loved being your recorder for over 20 years now. And I truly am running on my record of accomplishments. We continue to, we upgrade our technology all the time, but it's a very, very fine line. All of our records are deemed public information, but we work very hard in these years of mortgage fraud and identity theft to really protect your records and keep them safe. We have a number of tools and products that we use throughout the office, and we are just really, really careful about all of that. I'm not even sure my opponent has ever even stepped into the recorder's office. He has run for county board. He tried to run for county board again this year, I guess, and was removed from the ballot. So I'm not exactly sure his heart is in this. And I truly love my job, love my staff, and want to continue serving as your recorder.
Thank you, candidate. Now we'll move to the next question, and we'll start with you, candidate Vandenberger. Second question, do you have any plans or special projects that you would like to accomplish in your term in office?
You know, I think there's a couple of things that we want to do. Really quickly, the legislature and the statutes have not really caught up in terms of what the recorder's office is doing. And we would like to work a little more closely with our legislators in terms of liens. When somebody files a lien against your property, maybe you didn't pay for the garage that was painted and they put a lien on your property, they're not required to tell you that they have placed a lien on your property. And so when you go to refinance or buy a new home, sell your home, all of a sudden you realize that there's a lien on your home and you have to work very hard to get that satisfied before you can do one other thing. So one of our goals for next time is to really work very closely and see if we can't find a way that if someone places a lien on the biggest investment that you've ever made in your whole life, that they're required to at least tell you that they've done that so you can take the steps from there.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Harridan?
Yes, and as I mentioned before, I would like to have on this position removed as an elected position. But before that happens, and I think Mary Ellen had mentioned a couple of things that really do have hit home, and that is a lien on our property. I believe you should get an email, some kind of notification that somebody's putting a lien on your property. And the idea that somebody can put a lien on your property without you knowing, I think is not right. And I think as a citizen, longtime Lake County resident, I don't think that should be, that void should be eliminated. So that'd be a goal.
Thank you, candidate. And we'll start with you for the next question. What would you do if you first thought you discovered an error in a record?
Well, it's kind of interesting. When I worked at Abbott Laboratories, there was a situation where we had an error, and it was a significant error. And I think that the faster and the quicker you address an error, that's the most important. Honesty, research. And you can't, when you get an error and you have to research, you don't jump too quickly to conclusions, and that happens too often. There was a situation that Sara Lee, many, many years ago, had given out too many cards to give away a free car. And they didn't jump on that quickly enough. And I think it's very important that you research it, find out the problem, find out the truth, and jump on it and be honest to everybody, including the public.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Vandenberger? I'll get it right.
Vanderventer, I know, it's terrible. I married into that. I get it. Errors in our office are very, very tricky. If somebody places a lien, let's say, on your name, and it really wasn't supposed to be on your name, you can't just all of a sudden go in and remove that paperwork. There is a chain of title on every single piece of property, on every single name in our 7 million documents. You have to work very hard to, when you fix that error, there's a whole host of ways to do it. But you can't just come in and say, oh gosh, I'm just going to take that off the rolls because that's a mistake. It doesn't work that way. When you pay off your mortgage, you have your mortgage, then you get a release. There's a whole chain of documents that occurs in our office. So if there's an error, we have to go back to the title company. We go back to the banks. We work with them first to solve the errors, and then we will record that piece of information so you can see all the documents all the way in the chain of title.
Thank you, candidate. And candidate Vanderventer, can you answer this one first? Is there room for improvement in procedures or technology to make things easier for the public to actually access records?
We've made our records very, very accessible. As I said, first of all, they're all public information. So if you come into our office, you can work there all day long for free, and all the computers are set up. There is also online access. We have an agreement with title companies, banks, lawyers, all the folks that use our office on a regular basis. They pay a fee to access that paperwork. They can work 24/7 at home in their pajamas if they want to, and access all of our records. If just somebody, Susie Jones from the Jewel, wants to look up a few things in our office, there is a $5 fee for 24 hours of looking up information in our office. And the reason we require that, and we had worked very closely with the state's attorney's office several years ago, the reason we require that is because of identity theft and mortgage fraud. We use that $5 so they can put in their credit card so we know who is looking at all of your information, and we have an opportunity to get back to them if there's a problem.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Harridan?
There's a significant issue with the recorders where when you come into the office and you want to know your name, your records are linked to your name and not a PIN number. I think the PIN number and a record should be merged together so that you could be looking under a PIN number or your name. And I think that since our assets of our houses in this community are significant, I think we should be able to be allowed to merge that information so that PIN numbers and names are not separate.
Can I just respond to that? Because that was, I think you've gotten some misinformation. In our office, everything is linked together. You can search by PIN number, you can search by your name, you can search by address, you can search by legal description. They're all hooked into the computer together, and you can punch either one of those categories and find what you need.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate, would you like to respond to that?
I was just told that it was an issue. I have not run the office, and there must be something that I don't understand.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, candidate. The next question, and this will be candidate Harridan. You'll answer first. Do you think the recorder's office and clerk's office should be merged? Why or why not?
Well, as I mentioned in my opening statement, our county needs to save money. We have over 7,000 elected positions in the state of Illinois. 7,000. If each individual person says, well, I'm going to keep my job and I'm going to run for that gravy train, I'm going to keep 7,000 positions for the state of Illinois. We do not need that. This county needs to get rid of this job. Yes, I don't know this position as well as Mary Ellen does, but I'm going to work to get rid of it because we don't need it.
Thank you. Candidate Vanderventer?
Well, Lake County is the third largest county in the state of Illinois. Saying you just want to get rid of something when you're the third largest is a really nice soundbite, but it doesn't make any sense. The recorder's office has been there for over 170 years, and as I said, there is now one job, one duty, one task in that office that we do that is duplicated in any other office. We have been there for 170 years. I am certainly open to a cost study, but I think you have to do the cost study first. You have to collect the data. You have to make educated decisions on this. You just don't all of a sudden throw your hat in that you're going to run for an office and say, and gee, let's just throw the office away. It is irresponsible. It's a great soundbite, but we are the third largest county, and there's just a lot of work to do there.
Thank you, candidate.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
You know, we are the third largest county, but Cook County is actually looking at getting rid of the position. McHenry County, the second largest, is looking at getting rid of that position. You know, we need
They're
to
not
look
the
at,
second
oh, sorry, but there's another, you said 3 counties, sorry. I know McHenry County is looking at getting rid of this position. You know, 170 years ago, we rode a horse on down Washington Street to record our deeds. 55 years ago, 60 years ago, we had typewriters. We have computers. We have software. We have now less than a dozen people working in the office. So I think that we need to really take a look at this and save our taxpayers a lot of money.
Thank you. Candidates, did you have a counterpoint on that?
I'm not sure what to say, other than we have a
You don't
staff.
ride a horse.
You're right. We have a staff of 25. We have, we record almost between 800 and 1,000 documents every single day. To just say you're going to do away with the office and not really put any thought into it, any studies into it, honestly, it's just irresponsible.
Thank you, candidates. And I'd like to remind the audience, this is your chance to ask questions. You can see clear differences in how this office would be served. I only have 2 more questions before we move to closing comments, so do find one of the late volunteers and ask your questions now. The next question, and we'll start with candidate Vanderventer. If the office of Recorder of Deeds is eliminated, will the chief deputy be appointed or elected if you were elected?
Oh, I have no idea. Would the chief deputy be elected or appointed? Right now, the recorder is the elected official, and the deputy serves at the pleasure of the recorder. So I'm guessing it would stay the same, but again, that's why you would certainly need some information on this and a cost study and all this data collection. Those are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of questions that would be unanswered.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Harridan?
Well, obviously, that position as a deputy needs to be hired with a high qualification, and it shouldn't be an elected position. Obviously, I'm not as experienced as Ms. Vanderventer because I haven't had that experience. We do not need to get somebody in that high of a qualification to be elected. That person should be hired as a highly intelligent individual who can run that. And I have a lot of people that have worked for me. I would make sure that that person is significantly intelligent, has a qualification, and would not be elected position.
Thank you, candidates. At this time, I'd ask the audience, if you need a pencil or you need a card, raise your hands and one of the league volunteers will be able to assist you. And while we wait for that, a question that will be asked, what would be your top 3 priorities if you were elected to serve? And we'll start with you, candidate Mary Ellen.
Are my top 3 priorities? Well, I had already said that we'd like to work with the legislature in terms of just fine-tuning some laws that would much more easily affect the filings and the recordings in our office. We've worked very hard to bring new tools and products to the public. As I said, we have a 24/7 online access that you can certainly log on to on our website. We also have a tool that you can use to receive a text or an email if anybody has recorded anything against your name. It is a great tool for mortgage fraud and identity theft. You go right on our website, you just click in your phone number or your email, and anytime anything is touched on your name in our office, you'll receive a text asking you if this was something that you really did just do. But we work all the time with the title companies and the banks to see what other tools and products we can offer to them to make their job more easier. So we'll continue to do that and work closely with our clients.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Harridan?
Yes. I think that the first thing that needs to be done is you need to do analysis of the people that are working for that department and seeing where there's inefficiencies and see if they can be merged, like a study that be done. I worked at Abbott Laboratories and we merged 2 departments together, And it takes a while to figure out. The two departments would be the clerk's office. So you need to look at the clerk, study that, study the recorder of deeds, and see how these two could be merged. So the first one would be the recorder of deeds, the second would be the clerk's office, and then the study has to be completed and obviously presented properly. I don't think that there's, it can't be just, it's not a line item, it's something, it's got to be done correctly, and I've done it in the past where we've had to merge technologies, merge people, and retrain people, and I think it's going to have to be, it's not an easy task, but I think it's something I'd like to handle.
Thank you, candidates. I believe this is the end of our question and answer period. And hearing no more further questions, I'll ask candidate Harridan to go ahead and make up to 1 minute closing statement.
Well, I thank you for taking your time on this absolutely beautiful Sunday afternoon. The Bears can't lose because they're not playing today, but I really do appreciate you guys here. I think this is a wonderful forum. I would like to be able to be your candidate for Recorder of Deeds and save you $500,000 in 4 years.
Thank you, candidate. And candidate Vanderventer?
Thank you. I too want to thank everybody in the league and all of our sponsors today. Thank you so much for coming out. In closing, I would just add that my opponent is a full-time dentist, and this is a full-time job as recorder. My goal is to continue to provide top-notch service to the people of Lake County. Since 1996, I have been endorsed in every election by every newspaper in Lake County, including the Chicago Tribune, the New Sun, the Sun-Times, and the Daily Herald. So I thank you very, very much, and I respectfully ask for your vote on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Audience, it's appropriate at this time to join me in a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
So thank you again for remaining. It is a beautiful day out there, and we're thrilled that we have two qualified candidates running for the Lake County Circuit Court Clerk. We have candidate Keith Bren and candidate Aaron Cartwright Weinstein. And we just drew numbers, and candidate Bren is going to go first with his opening comments. And to remind the ground rules, up to 1.5 minutes for the opening comment, up to 1 minute for each question for an answer, and then up to 1 minute for closing comment.
Thank you for having me. I've been honored for the last 4 years to be your circuit court clerk. 4 years ago, I came in with some simple promises. I came in with a promise to be fiscally responsible with the dollars of the office. We have nearly a $10 million budget. I came in with a promise to modernize the office, to increase accessibility. It's your records, it's your office. It should be given on your terms. And third, to increase customer service and to remind the office and the people in the office that we all work for you, me and 137 people in 5 different courthouses. So how have we done? Well, the first, over the last 4 years, I've reduced the budget from $12.1 million to $9.5 million, a 22% reduction, and just recently was before the county board with unanimous approval of Democrats and Republicans on 2 subcommittees for projects going forward. The second, we've increased modernization in the office, whether it's beginning to move forward on electronic filing, whether it's an app. All in all, you can now get court information on your time, on your schedule. They're your records. And we've also done other ways to increase access. We've translated forms into Spanish. We've added translators at different courthouses and made sure they're available. And the third, customer service. We've improved customer service tremendously. We're working with our justice partners and police agencies and those who provide services to the community. Like NACASA, we're working with USO and Make-A-Wish and the Northern Illinois Food Bank and more. It's your office. I work for you. I've been proud to be your circuit court clerk, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, candidate Bren. Candidate Weinstein?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Erin Cartwright Weinstein, and I'm your candidate for clerk of the circuit court. I've been an attorney in the Gurnee community for over 16 years, with 4 of those years as an assistant state's attorney and the past 12 as a practitioner in family law. Mr. Brin did make those promises to us approximately 4 years ago. The problem is that those promises haven't been met. We've spent $5.7 million on increasing technology, and only 7% of the technology has actually been completed. We do not have the accessibility that the customers, the attorneys, the judiciary, or anyone else who needs to use the office can use it easily. The vendor that was used has no experience, and this was a no-bid contract. Currently, we have $150,000 of lack of fiscal responsibility that's gone out to lawsuits. Most lawsuits that we've seen in an elected position and probably ever in Lake County. This is an office that says a service to the judiciary. It's supposed to provide a service to the public. We need to improve that. We need to improve morale. We need to be more responsible with the decisions in the office, that we do not have this number of lawsuits that are ongoing and taking away from what needs to actually happen in and of itself in the office. The morale of the personnel in the office is low, and we need to improve that greatly. Thank you for having us here today and being here to hear what we have to say, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Candidate Weinstein. And we'll start with you for the first question. This was a leak question, and you have up to 1 minute to respond. What do you believe are the most important skills required of a circuit court clerk?
First of all, I think that you have to be a leader. You have to be somebody that everyone respects and everyone looks up to, and that actually provides on the promises that are made. We need to be able to the public needs to be able to hear the promise that you're going to be able to access technology, and that actually has to be produced. We need to be fiscally responsible and transparent to the public. We don't need to hide attorney fees in office supplies. We need to be honest when we say that our budget has been reduced by 22%, and telling the public that that's because one of the funds that it was funding these electronic filing projects was actually drained down from $5.2 million to $209,000. That's why his budget's so low. His budget is not low because he's actually been fiscally responsible. I would also not be using credit cards of $32,000 a year to be traveling and to be spending food for the office. I don't think that that's appropriate. I don't think that's transparent, and it's not fair to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Weinstein. Candidate Bren?
I'll agree with my opponent that one of the most important skills is definitely leadership. You elected me 4 years ago to be that leader, and I've been that leader, and that means sometimes taking difficult positions and making difficult decisions. But the office is not a jobs office. It's a circuit court clerk's office. And so as we move forward with changes in the culture, there have had to be some changes. And my opponent represents a small group of people who would rather things not change. They've been just fine for 20 or 30 years, and they'll be just fine 20 or 30 years going forward. Well, that's not what I stand for, and that's not what we move the office for, and that's not what I work for you to do. We're moving the office forward. The second thing is there needs to be someone who has a good command of budgets and finances. And the fact is, before coming to office, I was in charge of $10 million budgets as a consultant, but after that, for the last 4 years, I've been working with your budgets, nearly a $10 million budget. And of course, the reason my opponent doesn't know of these things and thinks they're hidden, she hasn't been to a single budget hearing. We just had budget hearings. She wasn't there. She wasn't the one before that or the one before that.
Thank you, Candidate Bren. Candidate Bren, you'll start the next question. What improvements can you make to the efficiency of performing the circuit court clerk's duties?
That's a great question, and one we've been focused on for 4 years, and one we're always looking to improve. The one thing I introduced to the office is the element of quality control. It's what every business in America has to deal with. If you stay stagnant, you go nowhere. Well, in government doesn't believe in quality control for the most part because it's not going anywhere. I do. So we're always looking at ways to do things better, whether it's individual things like our mobile passport unit to take generating revenues from now $8,000 a month to $11,700 a month, and we're taking it mobile to all of you, to doing things with our police agencies, electronic citations, so that you all can get tickets and electronic information on your schedule in ways that you can read it, in ways that you can use it. We work for you in the office, and we will always, under my leadership, find ways to do things better for you.
Thank you, Candidate. Candidate Weinstein?
Thank you. First of all, the budget hearings are online, so I did hear the budget hearing. It was very interesting. And what I heard was that some of these problems that we're having in the office have been dumped by Mr. Bren on the judiciary. And in doing that, he's not taking responsibility for what has happened in that office and what he has done with those funds. So one of the first important things that we have to do is we have to provide a transparent and efficient working office. With the morale of the office, which Mr. Bren just acknowledged in stating that there's poor morale and people don't like change, which I disagree with, because with an 85% backing from that office, they're clearly going to be okay with change because I'm very different from Mr. Bren. Second of all, the morale in that office is low. We have to improve the morale in that office. If you don't have happy workers and workers who respect you, they don't work efficiently and they don't want to be there. Second, and technology is very important. We're not going to reduce costs without it. We've been working towards this technology for years and years, and we still don't have it. We should have an answer as to why. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. I'm looking at the next question. It's pretty descriptive of what you just answered, so we'll move to the fourth question. And we'll start with you, candidate Weinstein. What sort of special care, if any, is required when dealing with court records involving minors?
Well, first of all, the legislature has already sealed those. So I think it is important that those remain being sealed. There's special parameters that you have to take when we are upgrading this technology to ensure that the minors' records are kept sealed, so that when people are accessing these documents, only people who should be allowed to access these documents are able to do so. Right now, there isn't any accessibility to them in any way, shape, or form other than being able to then go into the juvenile center to be able to look up adoptions, the juvenile cases, and the negligence DCFS cases. So those do continue to need to be sealed, but we need the money to do it. And right now, without the money, and all of the money being drained, we're going to have a serious problem being able to upgrade and protect these safety measures for people. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Weinstein. Candidate Bren?
Well, the good news is I'm pleased to inform my opponent that the job is already done. The stuff is sealed. Right now, if you want, you can go to Google or you can go to iTunes Store and you can download our app to get access to court information and records, and there won't be any juvenile records on there. We've actually already done it. One of the things that was part of the parameters in moving forward was that we maintain court record security. For me, you can't unring that bell. So that's primary, whether it's adoptions, whether it's juvenile. We've maintained it in everything we've done going forward and taken special care. We do not need additional money. It's already been taken care of, and the job's already getting done. And the bottom line is we're still going to move forward to see how we can get better access. Right now, the Illinois Supreme Court does not allow electronic filing to adoptions or juvenile records. I'm on the e-business committee, and we're working to possibly get a solution that will allow access to those records for people who really need it. From my perspective, we provide necessary services, but if you don't have to come down to one of our courthouses, you shouldn't have to. And that's what I look forward to moving forward in the future.
Thank you, candidate Bren. Candidate Bren, we'll start with you with the next question from the audience. How would you improve morale in the office?
It's an interesting concept on the morale of the office, because there's a group of people in the office who are very vocal, who don't want things to change. Again, they're very comfortable doing things the way that they've been doing it for decades. And truthfully, I can't really blame them if I were in their shoes, but that's not why you all elected me 4 years ago. We're going to take the office into the modern age to make it more efficient. And we're going to work with the people in the office to address issues as necessary. The office is felt, for the most part, to form a bargaining unit with a union called AFSCME at this point. And so, after a little bit of wrangling over the last year or so, much of it political, we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss these issues, and hopefully we can work through them. But at the end of the day, I work for all of you. The people in the office work for all of you. And we're going to continue to work for all of you and move the office forward. And if it means making tough decisions again on those people who want to stand in the way of moving your office forward, then I'm happy to make those decisions.
Thank you, candidate Bren. Candidate Weinstein?
51 people since Mr. Bren took office 4 years ago have either quit, retired early, or were fired. Part of these lawsuits were based upon retaliatory firings. The Illinois Labor Relations Board brought a lawsuit against Mr. Bren for failing to come to the bargaining table, retaliatory lawsuits, and intimidation of the employees. That's why I have an 85% backing in that office. They risk their jobs every day to be there to help me out because they don't want to be called stupid. They don't want there to be more managers than there are clerks. They don't want all of the managers and the clerks to be segregated anymore so that the clerks can't receive assistance with the duties that they have. There needs to be a restructuring in that office. The employees need to feel safe, they need to feel comfortable, and they need to be capable of doing their jobs. They're not afraid of change. They welcome change. They just want to be treated with respect, and that's something that we need to fix because that is not cost efficient for taxpayers to be spending money on employees that can't do their jobs aren't able to. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Weinstein. We'll start with you with the next audience question. How diversified is the office, and how will you work to maintain and/or improve the diversity?
That's me first, right? I'm sorry. So right now there's 20% diversity right in that office with Latinos and African Americans. There are 0 people in the managerial staff that are of African American, Latino, or any other ethnic descent in that office. At our last debate, Mr. Brin tried to correct me and tell me that there were 2 African Americans in management, but actually they've been demoted. So they are now working, one of them at the front of the clerk's counter in Park City and one in child support. So we need diversity. We need to treat people fairly. We need to be taking a look at why our office is not within the same, it's just not, proportionally to the county, it's not even. And I went to a race relations board in Gurnee the other night to start talking about this and to start figuring out what we can do to help improve that and how we can bring more success to the diverse, or to other ethnicities. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Weinstein. Candidate Bren.
Contrary to what my opponent says, we actually do have diversity in the office. I'm not quite sure where she gets her information, but probably from the same point as where she gets the rest of it. It's incorrect. I have 2 African American managers, and I actually have 4 Hispanic managers that are currently managers. They're currently working in the office, and they're currently on the floor with the rest of the employees doing the same work, including managing. Look, as far as diversification of the office, the majority of my office are female. We get some wonderful applicants from all over the county. What I primarily look at is not instead the race or the sex or ethnicity of applicants, but for the best qualified. I'm pleased that our workforce does reflect the community. We hire primarily from Zion and Waukegan, Winthrop Harbor, but at the end of the day, I'm going to hire the best qualified people for the job, and that's what we've done, and that's why we've had tremendous increase in efficiencies, and we've been able to cut our budget through these efficiencies by more than 22%.
Thank you, candidate Bren. And we'll move to the final audience question, unless there are further questions. Okay, seeing none, this will be the final question. Please explain the controversy in the circuit court clerk's office.
Is that to me?
That's to you first.
Okay. Well, I'm not exactly sure what controversy you're referring to, so I apologize, but I'm not sure I can adequately address that question.
Okay, thank you, candidate. Candidate Weinstein.
Thank you. There are numerous controversies going on in that office. First of all, we can talk about all of the lawsuits that are going on. The Illinois Labor Relations Board versus Keith Brin. Keith Brin versus the Illinois Labor Relations Board. Keith Brin fighting a Gold Star mom whom he fired, who received $1,200 in unemployment benefits, and he then fought those unemployment benefits to a tune of over probably about $40,000 by the time he was done. There are various other lawsuits. There have been EEOC complaints. There's currently a class action lawsuit filed against Mr. Brin for charging fees to people on motions to vacate that were not supposed to be being charged. There's controversy going on within the office, within the morale of the employees in that office. That's just the start. I mean, we have $32,000 in credit cards that Mr. Brin has run up that has been all over the Tribune. We have some serious problems in that office that need to be fixed.
Thank you, candidate Weinstein. And candidate Bren, we'll go ahead and move.
Yeah, if I may, and I'd be happy to extend another minute to my opponent here that I didn't quite understand. Now I know exactly where the question came from, so I can certainly better answer
I
it.
will ask if the candidate, if you oppose that, and we'll get it 1 minute, up to 1 minute to respond to what his comments would be.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
You know, a lot has been mentioned of these lawsuits, and I'll give you an example of why they're being used inappropriately as weapons. And not so much as to suggest that she's qualified, my opponent's qualified for this office, but just to cast some doubt on this particular office. Whenever there is a fee that is levied by the state that is charged through the office, I am named in a lawsuit. In this particular case, she mentioned the class action lawsuit, which is a mortgage foreclosure fee, which I am required to charge, period. And there were several others that she missed. Every time there is one of these fees, I'm named in a lawsuit. So there are lots of lawsuits in the office, and Mike Neerheim, the state's attorney, generally undertakes our defense of them. And as to the red herring of this $32,000 on the credit card, less than $8,000 a year in trips and travel, this is what we bring back to the office to lower your budget by more than $2.5 million in efficiencies. And by the way, the credit card is the county-issued preferred way of actually charging these expenses. It's done actually because the county prefers it that way, and just makes it easier to keep the records.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Weinstein?
Thank you. We pulled and FOIA'd 4 other elected officials' credit cards. We tallied them up for food and travel. They were all significantly below Mr. Brin alone's fees for food and travel. This is so inappropriate to the public and our taxpayer dollars. To tell everyone sitting in this room that this is just something that happens and something he can do and it's the approved method is totally incorrect. That county credit card is to be used sparingly and it's to be used for emergencies. And that is why Tom Rutter in the Tribune called him the king of freebies. He's using the office for his own personal gain. Additionally, he used private counsel to fight all of these lawsuits. Over $150,000 in our taxpayer dollars out to fight these lawsuits. This is a significant problem that he is charging and spending more than all of the other 4 combined elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Weinstein. At this point, we're going to move to our closing comments, and Candidate Brin will make the first closing comment, up to 1 minute.
Thank you for having me here. I've enjoyed answering your questions. Let me tell you what the final tally is on the records and how we've done over the last 4 years. We've reduced your budget by an unheard of 22%. We've saved you more than $2.5 million. And in an age where government budgets are doing nothing but growing, we're shrinking ours and not decreasing any services. And in fact, we're increasing services all across the board. We're increasing access. Right now, you can go on your phones and download our app for free. We've invested in it. It's one of the best things the attorneys have said that have come to the courts in 20 years. But it's information you can now get, as an example, on your schedule, on your time. We are no longer 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday because none of you are 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday. It's your office. I've been proud to work for you. All 137 members of the office, and by the way, we've reduced headcount by 22%, even to be more efficient through attrition. But we all work for you. 5 different courthouses, about a $10 million budget, and I look forward to having your support in the next election.
Thank you, candidate. And Candidate Weinstein.
Thank you. So I've been endorsed by the Tribune, the News Sun, the Daily Herald, the Fraternal Order of Police, and out of those, the Tribune, the Daily Herald, and the Chicago Law Bulletin cannot find this 22% decrease that Mr. Brin is discussing. The reason they can't find this 22% decrease is because he drained a fund and can no longer take any budget from that fund. He has 3 separate funds that he has the ability to control and make use of as permitted. And he has drained one of them out. That fund is supposed to pay for this upgraded technology that we must have by January 1st of 2018 by order of our Supreme Court. And we aren't going to be able to provide that because we no longer have the money to be able to do that. But we need to come in, I'm hoping that you vote me into this office to bring and restructure this technology, to restructure the morale in this office and the persons in this office, and to provide proper transparency and to provide a better use of taxpayer dollars for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Weinstein. Thank you, both of you candidates. At this time, audience, join me in a round of applause. At this time, we're not going to have a formal break, as we are going to go ahead and move. One moment. We're going to go ahead and move to the next race, which is just statements that will be taken. I do believe we have one person here for the Lake County Board District 16 that will read a statement. I'd like to invite him, and that is Mr. Timothy Walsh, correct? Yes. Yes, and I will be reading the statement for Mr. Terry Wilkie.
We're
I'd just like to thank the League of Women Voters for having this event, inviting me to this event. I want to thank everyone for coming to this event. Usually I'm out at doorsteps knocking on doors, and it's kind of nice that you're actually here knocking on my door, so to speak. Since 2004, my property taxes have gone up 5%. This year they went up a whopping 10%. Who can afford to live here? It's ridiculous, and that's why I'm running for office. Lake County, we're under the burden of the highest property taxes in Illinois. And Illinois taxes are the highest property taxes in the nation. Sky-high taxes are pushing people to move to Wisconsin. My office manager, for the past 12 years, her taxes have gone up in Kenosha less than the rate of inflation. Meanwhile, for Illinois residents, the only thing certain is our taxes will go up significantly every year. It's getting to the point where a lot of us can't afford to live here. It's time for accountability. We need to hold government accountable for how they spend our money, because our taxes are not fair or affordable. As a Lake County Board member, I will hold government accountable at every level. I will also be an advocate for freezes, especially for seniors and for vets with disabilities. In addition, I'd like to continue educating the public on property taxes. I feel that if you're better educated on the property taxes, you're more equipped to fight them. And I've been doing tax forums for years, showing people how to calculate their taxes, how to get comparable comps, and how to appeal your assessments. I want to empower people so they have the ability to fight their taxes. People have a lack of faith in government and politicians, and for a good reason. While we pay our taxes and play by the rules, they're getting rich off our tax dollars and ignoring our needs. Our incumbent Lake County Board member hardly ever comes to any community events. He doesn't come to village board meetings. He doesn't come to chamber events. He's not here today. This is one of the reasons I'm running for Lake County Board. I'm tired of politicians telling us one thing when they want to get elected and then doing nothing to help us when they do get elected. I want to be your Lake County Board member for District 16. My name is Tim Walsh, and thank you again for coming here.
Thank you, Senator Walsh. I will be reading the statement from candidate Terry Wilkie. Although I can't be here today, I wanted to express my gratitude and appreciation for the great work that the League of Women Voters has done over the years. I am a strong backer of the Equal Rights Amendment in both word, but more importantly in deed. Although we recently lost the fight to retain the Winchester House and all that this means for the nurses, their union, and their good-paying jobs, I am very proud to have been at the forefront of this fight. And you can be assured that in the future, whatever the political cost, I will always fight for the equal rights of women in the workplace and under the law. Yours in solidarity, Terry Wilkie. At this time, we have two candidates that are here that are running for the Lake County State's Attorney. We have candidate Michael Nierheim, and then we have candidate Matt Stanton. Candidate Stanton, you will go make your opening comments first.
Thank you. My name is Matt Stanton. I'm running for State's Attorney. I'm an attorney in private practice in Lake County. I'm a law professor and adjunct professor at Chicago Kent College of Law. I've worked as an educator and as a counselor. I'll tell you why this race is important, because it is really about leadership and the direction of that leadership. The Lake County office is an office that is infamous for wrongful convictions and prosecutorial misconduct. That is still being racked up as we speak. The Better Government Association reported in 2012, after Mr. Nierheim took office, that he interviewed all 144 of his employees and he replaced no one. This is the same office that we had before. He likes to say that leadership is not about firing people, but that's just a slick way for him to say that he kept everybody that was in place before. And to make it seem like that's all I'm interested in. Excuse me, but the state's attorney's office is an administrative role, and personnel decisions are hugely important. If this office personnel were in the private sector, many of them would be out of jobs by now. This is about accountability. It's about change when change is needed. And the way that we supervise the state's attorney is through our elections and through the vote. And this is our opportunity now to get the change that we were hoping we would get in 2012.
Thank you, Candidate Stanton. Candidate Nierheim, your opening comments, up to 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Mike Nierheim. I'm the State's Attorney of Lake County. My background, I was born and raised in Waukegan, lifelong resident of Lake County. And when I ran for this position in 2012, I made very specific promises to the voters. I told the people that I would take on the issue of wrongful convictions. I told the people I would bring diversity to the office. I told the people I would bring diversion programs to the office. And I told you that I would work hard to address our nation's heroin and opiate epidemic. And I'm very proud to tell you that as I sit here today, 4 years later, I've done everything I said I was going to do and then some. Our nation does have a reputation for wrongful convictions, but today it's a reputation for how we lead the nation in identifying and preventing them. We also have cutting-edge diversion programs, and we are also leading the nation for what we're doing to address our nation's heroin and opiate epidemic. I lead an office of 142 trained professionals that care about what they do, and I'm proud of every single one of them. So when I came into the office, I did interview everybody. 25% of my staff has been put into place by me. 60% of the supervisors have been put into place by me. And over 60% of those people are minorities or women. So the office today does look very different than it did when I took over, and I'm very, very proud of the work that we've done, and I hope to continue to serve you for another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. We'll move to the first questions prepared in advance by the League of Women Voters, and we'll start with you, Candidate Nierheim. And you'll have up to 1 minute, and the time signs are down there in the front row. The stop sign means you can finish your sentence. The first question, what can you do to balance the rights of the accused with public concern in high-profile criminal proceedings?
So you have to be as transparent as possible, but I believe very strongly that cases should be tried in the courtrooms, not in the media. So we are always going to take the high road. We're going to put our cases on in court, following the rules of evidence, which I teach. But when appropriate, we will release that information to the public. And I institute a policy that goes above and beyond what we're required to do by law, which is in any police-involved shooting that does not result in the arrest of an officer, we make the entire file open to the public. We put it on our website, and anybody can go through and read the entire file and watch the videos where appropriate. We do have to redact some things. But it's important that we're as transparent as possible on those cases, and we have been. We also bring in the Department of Justice to oversee our work. So again, court cases need to be tried in a court of law and not on Facebook, and I believe very strongly with that. But where appropriate, we will be as transparent as possible.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Stanton.
The mission of the prosecutor, of the state's attorney, is to dispense justice. To that end, the prosecutor's office should be just as interested in innocence as they are in guilt. To balance those, and so those rights are hugely important. We'll talk about the protection to the public. We have things like we have a bail system, bond system, where we have hearings in front of a judge in the courtroom if somebody should be held before trial. But we got in the trouble that we're in, and we continue to get in this trouble because this office has a lack of respect for that presumption of innocence in the due process of law. We continue to have people held without charges for extended periods of time, and then case simply dismissed. It's those basic concepts that are at the heart of the Constitution that we have to care for.
Thank you, Candidate Stanton. You'll start with the next question. I believe you just mentioned this in your last response. What do you believe is the most important responsibility of the Lake County State's Attorney?
The most important responsibility is to see that justice is done. The state's attorney works for the people of the state of Illinois, so that includes everyone. And that, to see that the criminal justice system is fairly, efficiently, honestly applied is probably the biggest job. There's other jobs that the state's attorney's office does, There's civil defense of the county and officials, and it has some things to do with child support enforcement. The execution of the criminal justice system has to be handled. That's an immense amount of power. It should be handled with humility and restraint, not like seeking big press announcements like we did with Operation Stop the Hustle that turned out to be something that went down the drain because of simple mistakes. We're not a bunch of cowboys. We are professional prosecutors.
Thank you, Candidate Stanton. Candidate Nierheim?
Thank you. Well, I started my career as a prosecutor, and I've been an attorney trying cases for 16 years. I've been a prosecutor, a defense attorney. I've worked representing indigent clients as a public defender. I've been on both sides of the law, and I know what it means to go to court and to do jury trials as a defense attorney and a prosecutor. And our job, quite simply, is to seek justice. In fact, I put that on our seal. It never was on there before, but that's ingrained in every single person that works in our office. And justice is different in every case. In some cases, justice is seeking the maximum penalty. In other cases, justice is diversion, or not charging somebody in the first place, which is why we have programs like drug court, veterans court, mental health court. The way I created a program to allow first-time nonviolent felony offenders the opportunity to avoid a conviction while still paying their debt to society. I also work to help create a pre-arrest diversion programs. So these are things we're doing in our office to try to keep people out of the system in the first place.
Thank you, Candidate Nierheim. You'll start with the next question. What is the state's attorney's role in healing the tension between the police and communities concerned about bias?
It's a significant one, and it's one I've played for the last 4 years. There are some forums that have happened recently, but the reality is I've been involved in this initiative ever since the day I took office. Part of it is helping to build understanding and promote understanding between communities and law enforcement, which is what I've done. A lot of it is to work to bring diversity to my office, to help other departments bring diversity. We also work we brought diversity training, for example, to all of our staff, which is something that had never been done before. But it's really about being active in the community. And those of you that know me know that I'm not just coming around now that I'm running for office or re-election. I've been in this community, active in this community my entire life, and I've been active in this community as state's attorney ever since I took office. And that is critical. So I'll continue to do that and to continue to help promote that understanding and build those bridges back up.
Thank you, Candidate Nierheim. Candidate Stanton?
Thank you. Bias, what can the state's attorney's office do? There's a couple different areas I'd like to address. One is when we have all the shootings that we've seen nationally, and very close by at home, like the Laquan McDonald case in Chicago, that ought to get everyone's attention. But what we have in this county is we've got an office that will take a mistaken identity and railroad anybody, regardless of what color they are. There is also perception of pro-police bias, that the state's attorney's office is too close to the police department and just acts as a rubber stamp to whatever post-arrest happens. In order to regain trust and respect of the population, we have to have clearly delineated roles. The state's attorney's office has a separate allied goal to the police, but they are not the police.
Thank you, Candidate. And Candidate Stanton, we'll start with you for the next question. What can the state's attorney do to prevent crime?
Well, the first thing would be the fair and equal application of due process. And when people know that's what they're going to be facing, I think that's where order begins. I think that we have to have full and tough sentencing measures on violent crime and gun crime, and I think that's something that we shouldn't be handing out deals on when it has to do with lethal violence. Community outreach is very important. I raised 5 children. You begin with the small ones, and you begin with access to power. And the state's attorney's office is something that you can understand even as a child. And the schools are very important with the community groups, partnerships with community groups, like the Black Lives Matter organizations that I've been involved with since I've been in the state's attorney's race.
Thank you, candidate Stanton. Candidate Nierheim?
So obviously you have to be tough on violent crime. That's a no-brainer. But one of the things we have to continue to do is to work to educate the community and in particular youth. A lot of crime is preventable. Identity theft, for example, is a crime that we're all most likely to be victims of, myself included. But it's also a very preventable crime, which is why for the past 4 years my office and my staff has been very open to going out to the public, to speaking to groups about ways to prevent crimes like identity theft, fraud, elder abuse, senior scams. We do drug forums, we do drug education for youth in our schools. We do drug education forums for community members to raise awareness for issues that are going on. You name it, bullying, teen dating violence, sexting, cybersecurity. We have been very active and will continue to be active in this regard. But really, prevention, this program that we just launched, The Way Out, it's modeled after an area in Gloucester, Massachusetts, where they saw a 30% reduction in crime after allowing people an opportunity to seek treatment rather than arrest. So we look forward to seeing those results too.
Thank you, candidate Nierheim. In both your answers, you alluded to the answer to the next question. What new programs would you like to implement? We'll start with you, candidate Nierheim.
So I'm going to continue the work that I've done with a lot of the programs that I started, cutting-edge programs like putting naloxone in the hands of the police, which has helped with 116 saves, with the Way Out program. There are other programs, though, that we're going to build. One program in particular is a program designed to help pair ex-offenders with jobs. I think a lot of people that come out of the system, that come out of incarceration, are truly well-intended. They want to get back on their feet. They want to avoid a life of crime. And the surest way to ensure that they do that is to make sure that they have meaningful employment. And I think there's certainly a role for the state's attorney to play in helping to build a program to pair jobs with ex-offenders, which will definitely show a reduction in recidivism and in turn, safer streets.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Stanton?
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is to stop convicting the wrong people. I think that would be a change and an improvement. I think that comes from actually doing the job of the state's attorney, supervising the office, making sure that we are actually putting the prosecutions in the right way in the right place. We just lost the major Lake County gangland investigation prosecution called Operation Stop the Hustle when Mr. Nierheim forgot to sign the wiretap warrants. That's a lot of money to taxpayers and a lot of initiative down the drain, and those people walked. There's other things we could be doing. There's something called the Actual Innocence Protocol that I would institute that's been used in other counties, in another county in Illinois, that would investigate problem charge cases before they get to the indictment.
Thank you, candidate Stanton. The next question will have a Y at the end. Do you support body cameras on all police officers? If so, why? If not, why not?
Yes, I think it's inevitable. I think it's changed the course of criminal justice in this country. It's changing it. What we've seen with people basically wearing phones in their pockets through cell phones and the access through the internet to make things public, I think that we have to be above reproach, and we have to get into the mindset that it's the same thing when I was going through a family case in my personal life, was you get used to it, the fact as if you're always being watched, you're always being broadcast. Then you're more likely to always tell the truth and always follow protocol. So, yes.
Thank you, candidate Stanton. Candidate Nierheim?
I absolutely do. In fact, I've worked with the Waukegan Police Department to help roll out their body camera policy, which they're the first in the county to go department-wide, actually the first in the world to use the program that they use. We helped them with the protocol. We actually worked in Springfield to help with that law. So as a prosecutor, we want as much evidence as we can get. Body cameras are evidence, and we certainly will use that evidence. They protect everybody. They protect the citizens and they protect the officers. So there's really no reason not to support them. I'm proud of Waukegan for taking the initiative to start with that, and I hope other departments will follow suit. I know it comes down to cost. There's a lot of cost, there's a lot of labor here, but at the end of the day, the concepts we're talking about in terms of justice and fairness and safety, you really can't put a price tag on that. So it's something I have supported and will continue to support.
Thank you, candidate Earheim. And the next question will start with you. Regarding prosecutorial discretion, what criteria would you, not your opponent, use when deciding whether or not to bring charges?
So we have a unit in our office called Felony Review, which is where we screen cases that the police bring to us for charges. There's over 1,000 cases a year that aren't charged. So this notion that there's a rubber stamp is just simply not true. What we do is we screen the case, we look to see if there's evidence to support the charge, and where there's not, we don't approve charges, and that happens on a daily basis. We also use our discretion not only to decide what cases are charged, but what to do with them when they are charged. Our drug court program, for example, is a prison diversion program. Everybody in our drug court program, if it weren't for that program, would otherwise be in prison. But because of that, they have the ability to get treatment and become part of the society that we all live in. The last program that we launched allows people, officers, to exercise their discretion with people addicted to drugs to not even make an arrest in the first place, so they can go to treatment rather than jail. And that's shown very positive potential.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Stanton.
It's a great thing to be able to have programs in place like a deferred prosecution program, alternatives to incarceration, that I've been talking about since I started in the primaries. What concerns me is the discretion that's being used currently in the Lake County office when there's an insistence on fighting cases that go against scientific evidence, where scientific evidence like DNA or other types of scientific evidence are being fought. There's open warfare with the Lake County coroner, problems with the Lake County sheriff that the state's attorney's office has. Why are we prosecuting cases that science has already shown are impossible to have occurred, but they continue to be charged? Or charging in the Jerry Hobbs case, the actual perpetrator, a guy named Torres, who's already got life sentences and death sentences. We want to bring him back here and charge him again.
Thank you, candidate Stanton. The next question will start with you. What steps do you or will you take to vet your assistant state's attorney's work, detective's work, before going to the grand jury?
Well, I think the type of people and how we vet our employees is very important. When I'm critical of the office now for having maintained the previous crew and saying nothing's changed except the top line, I think how do you shift and change an institutionally entrenched problem? We've got a good example recently. The Chicago Cubs are in the World Series now. And this is more than just a little sports comment. Theo Epstein, the general manager, has a question that he asks all these athletes besides their statistical information. And that question is, give me 3 examples of how you faced adversity in your life and on the field. And you have to examine the kind of crew that you're going to be putting out there in the office. The state's attorney's office should not be a lifetime position for state's attorneys, guys that have been there for 20 or 25 years, especially where they've had their fingers in these wrongful convictions.
Thank you, candidate Stanton. Candidate Earheim.
Sure. Well, the Bears tried that too. It didn't work out so well. But what we do is we recommend and we require all police officers to video record all felony statements that they take. And that's not required by law, but we require it. When an officer comes to us before a case is going to go to the grand jury, if they have a confession and a confession only, that's not going to be sufficient to authorize charges. So that's part of the screening process that we're always doing. Having our officers trained, having our office train police officers, having our staff train our own staff and bring in outside training continually is part of something that we've been doing to make sure that the cases we're charging are solid in the first place. And again, there's over 1,000 cases a year that we don't charge, that don't go to the grand jury because they don't meet our requirements. We also have a conviction integrity unit, which is an in-house unit of people who are trained to make sure that we're not convicting people innocently and to let people go that have been. And I've dismissed 3 cases since I've been in office.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Nierheim, we'll start with you for the next audience question. Why do we prosecute people who cannot afford child support payments, but not people who violate child visitation orders? What do you plan to do regarding this?
So our child support division, this is contracted through the state of Illinois, and we, basically what we do is we uphold and enforce the orders set in family court. We're not involved in the setting of those orders. We're not family law attorneys. We're not allowed to be by law. Our job is very specific. So if enforcement is required, if somebody's required to pay child support and they don't, we're going to enforce that order. And incarceration is a last resort in child support, just like it is in the criminal courts. We want people to pay their child support. It's hard to pay child support if you're in jail. But if somebody's ignoring a court order and they're not taking care of their family, that order will be enforced. And that's something we've always done and will continue to do. But our role is very limited. We also do and have charged cases where people violate the visitation law. And that's, it's a Class B misdemeanor. And we have charged that and will continue to. So our role with regard to child support is limited, and it's set forth by a contract through the state of Illinois.
Thank you, candidate Nierheim. Candidate Stanton?
It's the social policy of the state of Illinois to have the child support enforcement pursued through the state's attorney via contract. The people are sent to jail in a lot of cases if it's found that they're in contempt of court. Now, there's other sanctions that can be asked for in a case, and I don't know if sending somebody to jail is beneficial to the family or to the person that's paying child support, or in the lack of paying child support. The visitation issues are handled outside of that. They're in the civil courts, but you can have similar penalties for visitation violations, but you have to use a private attorney or go yourself into the family court. Now, an expansion of the state's attorney's role in assisting divorced and broken families, I think, is something that needs to be looked at, and I would favor a task force to investigate that.
Thank you, candidate Stanton. And we'll start with you for the next question. We still have quite a few questions, and I want to be respectful to the next race, so we'll do our best to get these answered. So if you can give a thoughtful response in about 45 seconds, that would be appreciated. Here's the question. What drug and alcohol testing is in place for the state's attorney's staff, especially those employees who are operating county vehicles? Is it random? Is it periodic? Or is it not at all?
For me?
Yes, you will start.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not aware of what protocols are in place or if drug testing is being used in the state's attorney's office for employees or for attorneys or for both. I would think that you'd have to make a case, perhaps like as it did in the question, for operating county vehicles. Otherwise, you'd ask Mike, see what he's doing.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Nierheim?
We don't drug test our employees. Our employees are put through a very strenuous hiring process, background check, physicals. I trust the people that go to work every day to seek justice on behalf of all of you. They do a tremendous job, so I could answer that in probably less than 45 seconds, but there is no policy on that.
Thank you, candidate. The next question will start with you, candidate Nierheim. With all the wrongful convictions, what are the steps being made to make officials responsible for their actions?
So it's twofold. What we do is we try to identify those cases and free people where appropriate. Again, I've put my money where my mouth is. When I see somebody that's been wrongfully convicted, I'll free them, and I've done that. I've dismissed 3 cases since I've been in office, cases that we've identified. We've been very open to looking at old cases where there's DNA. We have not objected to a single request to test DNA in an old case since I've been in office. And I'm glad for that, because one of those tests led to the exoneration of somebody that had been wrongfully convicted 22 years ago, and I freed that person. So that's what we do. We're going to continue to look at those cases to not only identify them, but to put protocols into place to make sure they don't happen anymore, which is also something we're doing, which is gaining national attention.
Thank you, Candidate Muirheim. Candidate Stanton?
This is a question that goes to accountability, public servants being accountable. To wrongfully convict somebody not only is a travesty on a personal level, but also unsafe because in many cases it allows perpetrators to go on and on. But it's also cost the taxpayers tens and tens of millions of dollars in lawsuits. I am not aware of anyone being replaced from their job for their wrongful conviction. These are serious issues. It's not as if somebody burnt the toast. The 3 cases that Mike refers to, I'm not sure if they're felonies or misdemeanors, but you have to free people when they're innocent. That's your job. To reform is to replace the people that caused the wrongful convictions in the first place.
Thank you, candidate. We'll have time for 2 more questions. We'll start with you, Candidate Stanton. Drugs have been in the communities for years. Why now, all of a sudden, the drug program?
I think that drug abuse is a multifaceted thing, and it's one thing to try and stop the drug use, but it's important that we, as a society, look at the underlying causes of drug use, which typically are unemployment, poverty, lack of education, those kinds of things. It's, to stop the drug use and and to return people to the street, often they just bounce back again. There is a law that's being proposed now that would put drug treatment, create more alternatives to get the drug treatment in the community-based, community-sponsored home settings rather than the institutions, criminal institutions.
Thank you. Candidate Muirheim?
So the reason there's a focus, is this on? The reason there's a focus on this now is because I'm in office, and I've made it a priority because I know that young people in Lake County, all over Lake County, are dying because of heroin and opiates. So I've made that one of my top priorities, and we are literally saving lives. I put naloxone, which is the overdose antidote to heroin overdose, in the hands of the police. 116 saves in Lake County alone in 2 years. 116 people that have a second chance at treatment because of that initiative. Literally saving lives. And we have to continue to do that because this is an epidemic. I don't use the word lightly. It's an epidemic and it affects every one of us. But it's been my priority ever since I took office.
Thank you, Candidate. I'm not sure your mic is on. The next question I'm going to combine, and we'll move to closing comments. And we'll start with you, Candidate Muirheim, as you check that mic. In your career as an attorney, what's your jury trial experience, and who has endorsed you?
So I've been an attorney for 16 years. As I said earlier, I've been a defense attorney, a public defender, and a prosecutor. I have tried jury trials since the first days at the office as a young prosecutor. I have, to answer the question in terms of the amount of trials, I couldn't give you an answer because there's been hundreds. I have tried cases as a defense attorney and a prosecutor, and that's important because as the chief law enforcement official for Lake County, your job is to lead the office, and you have to be able to lead by example, which is what I've done. By way of endorsements, I'm proud to be endorsed by the Tribune, the Daily Herald, Fraternal Order of Police, the Center for Racial Equity. I'm endorsed by Democrats and Republicans alike, as well as independents, even the Farm Bureau and organizations like that. Sorry.
Thank you, Candidate Muirheim. Candidate Stanton?
In my time as an attorney, I've worked in criminal cases, family cases, as well as things like contract and bankruptcy. It's important to know how to build a case and to carry your evidence forward. The state's attorney's office is in charge of supervising the attorneys. I'd ask Mike how many cases he's tried since he's been the state's attorney. What's important is the leadership that we show by understanding that where you've got a problem, you don't circle the wagons and protect your people that are doing things the wrong way. You have to replace them. You have to hold the office accountable. And I've been endorsed by Dick Durbin.
Finish the question.
The preeminent senator in criminal justice reform has endorsed me, Dick Durbin.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and move to closing comments and closing statements, I should say. And you have up to 1 minute to make that. And Candidate Stanton, we'll start with you.
The state's attorney's office has virtually unbridled power. There's very little oversight over the office outside of the vote. The vote is where we exercise our oversight of the office. This is especially true in Lake County. I refer to the mentality there as that of a country club. Mike came into office promising to change that, but he hasn't. The same troubles follow the office. As I look in the audience today, I see people here that are victims of this office. People that I've only, in almost every case, I've only met them here. Juan Rivera, Benny Starks, Nigel Patrick, a deacon and a local businessman that was picked up in the Operation Hustle Suite. Talk to them. They're real people. They've got real stories. And you should realize that with that kind of behavior in the state's attorney's office, that could also be you.
Just want to say thank you for your closing comments, Candidate Stanton. At this time, Candidate Nierheim.
Thank you. Well, again, I ran for this office in 2012. I made very specific promises to all of you, and I've kept them all. I don't just talk about these issues in the abstract. I have very specific programs that I've put into place to address them. As a prosecutor, I make tough decisions every day. I have ever since I took office. And when you do that, you are going to make enemies. And I don't apologize for that. In fact, I'm proud of that, because if everybody loved me, that would mean I wasn't doing my job. So I will follow the law, and I will follow the facts, and I will make and continue to make the tough decisions that have made Lake County a national leader in areas like wrongful conviction prevention, in areas like diversion, in areas like the opiate epidemic, and these things that we are doing, cutting-edge programs that lead the nation, which is why groups like the Tribune, the Herald, Center for Racial Equity, some of these groups that really pay attention to this stuff have endorsed me, and I hope you'll do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Nierheim. Audience, at this time, it's appropriate to join me in a round of applause. At this time, we'll go ahead and commence with the ending program for the Lake County Coroner, and this will last for approximately a half hour. And we do have 3 candidates. You'll notice on the program that candidate Michael Dunworth is left off, but he is fully participating and here today and will participate in all ways. So do get your questions ready, and thank you so much for staying. This has been a lovely afternoon. I'm sure you're hearing clear choices in the quality candidates that want to represent you. So do get your questions asked. This is the best way that the Lake shines through the grassroots effort to get you that information in such a fair and transparent way. With that, I would like to introduce our 3 candidates. We just drew numbers to take the order of the opening comments, and that determined the closing comments as well. And we'll have candidate Howard Cooper that'll make his opening remarks first. Candidate Michael Dunworth will go second, and then also candidate Rudd will go third. Gentlemen?
I'm Dr. Howard Cooper. I'm a lifelong resident of Lake County. I've been a dentist for 25 years, and I practice in Gurnee. I've also been practicing forensic dentistry for just as long. In the late 90s, I studied at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, and at that time I joined DMORT, the Disaster Mortuary Operational Response Team. On 9/11 at 11 a.m., my deputy commander phoned to see if I could go to New York. The following day, I was flown to New York on an Air Force C-130 with 2 F-16s by our side. We were the only plane to take off from O'Hare that day. In New York, I worked at Ground Zero in the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner doing dental identifications of the victims of the World Trade Center. Earlier that year, I became hazmat certified, and I became a member of the DMORT Weapons of Mass Destruction team. With this team, I spent 5 weeks in New Orleans recovering, decontaminating, and identifying the victims of Hurricane Katrina. I've worked with coroners and medical examiners across the country performing dental identification. My main reason for running for coroner is death prevention. I want to get into our high schools and talk to the kids about heroin, texting and driving, suicide, and alcohol. Every single high school in our county has had multiple heroin deaths. The first time you try heroin, you're hooked. We need to stop this behavior before it starts. I'm the father of 5, and something needs to be done. In addition, we need to serve our citizens. If someone comes to the coroner's office, it is most likely the worst time in their life. We need to be compassionate and help them through the tough times. I'd also like to remind everyone that by law, the coroner cannot perform autopsies. A forensic pathologist must be hired to do them. I'd also like to point out that I'm a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security and the only candidate with hazmat certification. I believe this is important with today's threat of ISIS. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Cooper. And then now we'll go with Candidate Donilworth, and these gentlemen have agreed to share the mic, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. My name is Michael Donilworth. I'm a 30-year veteran of the Waukegan Police Department, and I've had 4 years at the coroner's office. And the thing we need to remember is that the coroner's office is a law enforcement position. It's not a medical one. And as Dr. Cooper said, the coroner does not do autopsies. I believe I have the right experience. I have a bachelor's degree from Western Illinois University. I have over 38 years of experience in investigations. I have over 2,500 hours of police training, and I've completed the Medical Legal Death Investigators Basic and Master's course. Everyone in our office needs that certification. I wanted to advise you I'd be a full-time coroner, 24/7. We'll be there all the time. And during my time as an evidence technician with Waukegan Police from 1981 to present, I've observed and I participated in hundreds of autopsies. I have a working relationship with the forensic pathologists that our office would hire to do our autopsies. I am committed to improving the quality of work in the office, and during our investigation, I will follow the facts and nothing else. I've worked in the office now for the 4 years. I've noticed it lacks compassion, professionalism, and integrity, and I am going to bring those back.
Thank you, Candidate Donilworth. Candidate Rudd.
My name is Dr. Thomas Rudd. Thank you for having me here. Currently, I'm the coroner from Lake County, taking office in December of 2012, and I'm now the Democratic write-in candidate for coroner endorsed by the entire Lake County Democratic Party. My credentials are as follows. I'm the only candidate up here who is a licensed physician and surgeon who can practice medicine. My specialty is pathology, and I'm board certified in that, as well as taken the test twice voluntarily and passed. When I got into office, I instituted the principles and protocols of the National Association of Medical Examiners. By doing that, we avoid any conflict of interest because we follow protocols that are done by the entire nation. My background is that I signed out 750,000 surgical pathology cases over a 40-year span, which is equivalent to 26,000 autopsies being performed. I'm the only candidate out here who knows how to read a medical chart, who knows how to do a treatment plan analysis, who can analyze lab and radiologic data. And who do you want to talk to when your loved one dies? A cop or a dentist? Who's going to explain best to you how your loved one died? It's obvious. It's a physician and one who happens to be a pathologist.
Thank you, Candidate Rudd. At this point, we'll move to the questions that have been prepared in advance by the League. The ground rules will continue as in the other formats. You'll have up to 1 minute to answer that question, and hopefully a coherent answer that with the least amount of time is best to acknowledge all the questions from the audience. The first question will start with you, Candidate Donilworth, and then we'll proceed to your left. What would your coroner's office do to balance the work of a death investigation with sensitivity for the bereaved?
Well, all the investigators would be given the time that they need to complete their investigation. They would complete it with compassion, timely death notifications, and also timely death certificates. I would make sure that they would have the time to do what they need to do and the time to speak with the family or any other organization that would need their help at that point in time.
Thank you, Candidate. Candidate Rudd?
Could you repeat it once more?
Absolutely. What would your coroner's office do to balance the work of a death investigation with sensitivity for the bereaved?
Our deputy coroners all have training in sensitivity and compassion, otherwise we would not have hired them. They have extensive experience. They know what they're doing when they're dealing with patients, and relatives of people who have died. In this day and age, of course, with social media, a lot of results get back to families before we can even get to them. So we try to make sure we get to the families as soon as possible. In terms of answering questions, as I said before, if a family has questions about how their loved ones died, I can talk to them. If you want to talk about compassion, I worked 15 years at Highland Park Hospital, where I not only made diagnoses and gave the diagnoses to the patients, I scanned them when I did nuclear medicine and treated them with radioisotopes. I followed some up to 15 years, and yes, in some cases I've even done the autopsy on them and had to talk to their family. I'm a physician, I know compassion.
Thank you, Candidate Rudd. Candidate Cooper?
Well, I think there are a couple things we can do. First, I believe that our investigators need to be boarded by the American Medical Legal Board of Investigation. And I think that'll do a couple things. It'll allow them to further their knowledge, to be able to do the investigating with better techniques and better technology. It'll also, they'll be doing more sensitivity training as well, which will give them more compassion. I believe that the coroner needs to make death notifications. I believe that it needs to be done in a timely fashion. It's a 24-hour-a-day job. I don't believe that come Friday at 5 o'clock when the office closes, if somebody is involved in an accident, that their notification waits until Monday morning. I believe that that needs to be done whenever it happens, which is what I will do. Also, as far as compassion goes, certainly my everyday life is compassion. I'm a dentist. Most of you probably don't want to be in your dentist chair right now getting a root canal. So I am compassionate. I deal with people every single day. I treat patients, and I'm very good at what I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Cooper. Now we'll go to the second question, and we'll start with Candidate Rudd. What do you feel is the greatest preventable risk to the lives of people in Lake County, and what part can the coroner play in preventing that risk?
It's hard to pick one. Obviously, we have the drug problem. We also have texting. We have multiple problems that people engage in that cause their death. What we have done in this office is established an education and teaching. For instance, we have dozens and dozens of high schools that visit more than once a year. We educate people from the Youthful Offender Program. We have actual individual court-ordered autopsy viewings. We have Law Day multiple tours. We have youth leadership conferences. We have Citizen Police Academy tours. We have tours from the Great Lakes Naval Station. We also have paramedics, medical technologists, nursing students, phlebotomy students, individually arranged tours and education. We even have the Lake County Medical Society show up.
Thank you, Candidate. Candidate Cooper?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What do you feel is the greatest preventable risk to the lives of people in Lake County, and what part can the coroner play in preventing that risk?
Well, I believe that right now in our county, it's the heroin epidemic. I believe we need to get into our high schools. We need to talk to the kids about heroin. I think there's also other issues as well, texting and driving and certainly teen suicide. But my main priority right now is to get into the high schools and talk to the kids about heroin. It's a huge epidemic. It's a problem that does not just affect, junkies on the south side like when we were growing up. I believe it affects right now, you're looking at your honor students, you're looking at your athletes, you're looking at kids that you would never imagine have these addictions. And we need to get in there, we need to talk to them before they start. The first time you try heroin, you are hooked. It's a lifelong battle to kick that habit. So as the coroner, we can get into the high schools, we can talk to the kids, we can educate the parents, and we can certainly make a really good mark on our citizens.
Thank you, Candidate Cooper. Candidate Donworth?
I agree with Dr. Cooper in the heroin addiction. It is phenomenal how bad that is in Lake County, and how at times it is preventable, and through education it can be preventable. And we've had actual mothers trained to take care of their kids who are heroin addicts, and we're able to save them. We need to make sure that we can prevent, of course, texting and driving. The child safety program, especially with the child safety seat program, they have, we had installation at the coroner's office, and also basically it's just getting them the information that they need and them being able to call our office, and we can answer their questions. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. That was a tough question. The next question will start with candidate Cooper. Illinois state statutes charges the coroner with being a conservator of the peace. What does that mean with respect to how you will perform your duties?
Well, I think that what we need to do is, first when we get, it has to do with the crime scenes, and we need to make sure that, we go in and we investigate everything properly. We need to make sure that everything is done by the letter of the law, making sure that there's no room for error. We also need to make sure that we're compassionate in doing those things. We need to make sure that if somebody's going to be charged with something, we want to make sure that everything we did is done correctly to the law with perfect precision so that there's no issues later on.
Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Cooper. Candidate Donenworth?
Well, with my law enforcement experience, I know how to follow the law, and I know how to follow the evidence. I was an evidence technician for 38 years. I know how to find the evidence. I know how to interpret it, and I know how to work with the state attorney's office, the other police departments, and supervise them if needed in evidence collection. But I'd definitely make sure we would follow the law.
Thank you, candidate Donenworth. Candidate Rudd?
Basically, conservator of the peace is a law enforcement job. That's what it means. It's law enforcement, but it also has judiciary responsibilities. You can hold an inquest into a death investigation, but that's it basically. You're a law enforcement officer, and when somebody dies, you are in charge of that patient and the immediate perimeter, and you're to do the job of determining the cause and manner of death.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Donenworth, we'll start with you. What are the hours for the position, and would you do this full time?
Well, the hours are 24/7. I would be available every hour of the day, either by telephone or in person, and that it is a full-time position. The calls come in at all times, the questions come in all the time. And you have to be there to answer them, and you have to be there to compassionately tell these families what happened. And that will require you to be there at all times.
Thank you, candidate Donenworth. Candidate Rudd?
Well, basically, the office hours are 8 to 5, so if you want to come in and get materials, you can. As far as the coroner goes, I agree, it's 24/7, 365 days a year. You're to be available at all times, unless, of course, you have to obviously occasionally take vacation, in which case, if you have a very good chief deputy coroner, as I do, he can handle the situation, and if he can't, even on vacation, I can take the call.
Thank you, candidate Rudd. Candidate Cooper?
The office is obviously 24/7. That's something that I'm actually very familiar with. I started practicing when I was 24 years old, and I've been on call 24/7 for my whole career, the last 25 years. So it's nothing that's new to me. Believe it or not, I get calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been at my office at 3 in the morning putting people back together after accidents. So it's something I'm very familiar with, and I've been involved with, like I said, my whole career. I also think that we have to realize that death notifications need to be done in a timely fashion. And again, that's the coroner's job. If at 3, 4, 5 in the morning something happens, we need to be at that person's house. I think that it should be the coroner that's giving a death notification, not a police officer. So I believe that the coroner's job is to do that and be compassionate and be the first person that family sees.
Thank you, candidate Cooper. Candidate Rudd, we'll start with you for the next question. Wouldn't it save the county money by doing the autopsy and not to contract it out?
As I think Mr. Donenworth said, the coroner by definition is not allowed to do an autopsy. Okay, the coroner position comes back from English times when King Richard ran out of the ability to tax people, so he decided to tax everybody that died. So he went and collected a coin, Corona Coroner. We are, even though I'm board certified pathologist, I cannot do an autopsy. But if we convert the position to a medical examiner's office, we can save the county anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000, because a medical examiner can work for about $200,000. Right now we're spending about $375,000 doing autopsies and paying the coroner.
Thank you, Candidate Rudd. Candidate Cooper?
Again, as I stated in my opening, the coroner by law cannot perform autopsies, so that's just the way that it is. I do not think that we should make our coroner county a medical examiner system, which is something that Dr. Rudd's talked about. The reason for that is because it takes away from the power of the people. If the coroner's not performing the duties that he needs to be doing, then it's up to the people to vote that person out of office. So it gives you guys the power. Also, it's key to note that almost all the counties in Illinois and in a lot of other states are coroner counties. Cook County is a medical examiner system, and we've seen lots of trouble with that medical examiner's office. And the way that they get appointed is that they're appointed by the county board. So it's a very political position. This allows it to be a political position that the citizens elect.
Thank you, candidate. And Candidate Donenworth.
Yes, as I said earlier, the coroner cannot do autopsies. I believe that is a good thing, and just like everyone has said here, that you need to be accountable when you are in the coroner's office, and then you need to be able to express this through your office. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we've had some duplications, so we will consolidate and move to the next one. And we'll start with you, Candidate Cooper. How would you manage a conflict between the evidence, the family's view, and the police department views?
Well, I think that sometimes there are going to be conflicts. Depending on the situation, there are definitely going to be different biases according to different groups of people. And the only way that our office needs to handle that is that the evidence is the evidence. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. I need to know that our technicians, our investigators are doing everything they're supposed to be doing to the letter of the law and making sure that everything is done correctly. Now, if that means that we need to go outside and run other tests and do other things, then we will do that. But our office, it makes no difference what anybody else believes. We need to make sure that what we're doing is correct and absolutely perfect in every step of the way.
Thank you, Candidate Cooper. Candidate Donenworth?
We need to follow the law, and we need to be open with the families, with the police, and with the evidence technicians. I know the investigators there are all good. The evidence will show the evidence. We will be open. We will be able to show the family what the police has, what the evidence technicians has. We would get together. We would speak with them. We would try to explain everything to the best of our knowledge, to what happened. But again, you are going to have disagreements. And when you have disagreements, I will try my best to explain what happened, and I would follow the law.
Thank you, Candidate Donenworth. Candidate Rudd?
This is the way we handled this when I took office. First of all, we started following the principles and protocols of the National Association of Medical Examiners. This is the premier death investigation nationally known, and by doing that, we follow the procedures, and therefore we make sure that all the evidence is strictly following current scientific medical knowledge. Once you use science to determine the cause of manner of death, there won't be any conflicts. Now, since this office is independent, we will review the police reports, but we will not accept sloppy police work or politically correct police work. We'll accept work that is rock solid, and then we'll come to a conclusion as to the cause and manner of death.
Thank you, Candidate Rudd. The next question you just touched on, Candidate Rudd, but we're going to start with Candidate Donenworth. I said that right this time. Thank you. You're both tied, all of you are tied to party tickets. Why should we believe that you will be independent and provide accurate medical information for the cause of death, irregardless of party affiliations? And we'll start with you.
Well, there really isn't any party influence on the office. Okay, the office is there. We're not tied to anybody. We will go in there and we will follow the evidence, and that will make us correct in what we do.
Thank you, Candidate. Candidate Rudd?
It doesn't really matter what party you belong to. I'm assuming that both of us, all three of us, have integrity and honesty, and party affiliation doesn't mean much.
Thank you. Candidate Cooper?
I mean, like everybody said, I mean, the party plays no part in it at all. The way that the state runs is that in order to run for any of these positions, you have to declare a party. That's just the way that it works. So that's what we all do. But there is no party politics when it comes to our investigations. We do, again, according to the law, we do what we're supposed to do, and that's just the way it is, period.
Thank you, candidates. We have two more final questions, and the next one's going to be one that it's going to be informative, just to differentiate the meanings of these positions. So we'll start with you, Candidate Rudd. Can you explain the difference between an inquest and an internal case conference and the advantages of one over another?
There are sometimes when a death occurs that you may want to call in the witnesses that viewed the death or had some involvement in the death. So you submit subpoenas to them, you bring them in, you have people, sort of like a jury that will listen to the questioning which is conducted by the coroner. It's not really necessary anymore. It's sort of duplication because grand juries should be able to do that themselves through the state's attorney's office.
Thank you, Candidate Rudd. Candidate Cooper?
Yeah, the inquest process used to be very prevalent a long time ago, and we really haven't been doing it in Lake County. We have been, and I've been talking with other coroners that have done things internally where we will sit down with the case and go through it all in order to look at the facts and make sure that everything was done correctly. And that's something that's done in-house. If we need to bring in other people to look at that information to be non-biased, we certainly will. It's going to obviously depend on the situation at hand.
Thank you, candidate.
Normally, all the investigation is done in-house. We discuss all the cases with the coroner before he rules on the case. So we will follow the law, and if there are any questions, just like Dr. Rudd said, we will subpoena people. We will have them come in, we will talk to them. We will find out if there are any questions, because you should not be ruling on a case if you have any questions. And I would be the one that would make sure that we would follow the law and follow the rules that we have to do in the inquest.
Thank you, candidates. The next and final question from the audience will tee it up nicely for your closing comments. And we'll start with you, Candidate Cooper. What credentials do you have that qualifies you for coroner, and who are you endorsed by?
As I stated earlier, I've had a lot of forensic experience. The two biggest disasters that happened in this country, 9/11 and Katrina, I've been involved with intimately. I've also been a member of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences since, I believe, 2000 or 2001, and I go to those meetings every single year, which is the premier academy for forensic sciences. I've also had multiple positions in different societies. As far as endorsements, I've been endorsed by the Chicago Tribune, the Daily Herald, the Farm Bureau, and also a number of police officers and coroners throughout the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Cooper. Candidate Donenworth?
Well, my 30 years with the Waukegan Police Department in the investigative manner there, the 4 years at the coroner's office, over 38 years of being an evidence technician. and knowing how to do cases, knowing how to follow the law. And I feel that I can do this job because it's an investigative job. It's not a medical one. I'm endorsed by Waukegan FOP Lodge 5, the Lake County Sheriff's Office Lodge 66, and also by the 75,000 people that voted for me in the primary.
Thank you, candidate Donworth. And candidate Rudd.
As I mentioned before, I'm the only candidate up here who is a licensed physician and surgeon who can legally practice medicine. I'm also board certified in anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, and nuclear medicine. I've practiced medicine for over 40 years. I ran the laboratories at Lake Forest and Highland Park hospitals for 15 years. I ran a budget of a 9-man pathology group that had $8 million. I handled the budget for the Consolidated Medical Labs, which was a $25 million budget, and I worked for the largest commercial lab in the United States, which had a budget of over $100 million. As a physician, I know how to deal with patients and explain how they died. I know the science of medicine. Nobody else does.
Thank you, candidate Rudd. At this time, we'll move to our closing comments, and we'll ask you to keep your comments to about 1 minute, and we'll start in the same order. That lot was determined at the beginning, and we'll start with you, candidate Cooper.
First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and sponsors for hosting this event, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time on your Sunday afternoon to educate yourselves on some of the issues for the November election. I truly appreciate voters wanting to learn about the issues. I'd also like to thank the Chicago Tribune, the Daily Herald, the Lake County Farm Bureau, and numerous police officers and coroners for their endorsement. I'm truly humbled. As I stated in my opening, I truly believe that the coroner's office is about death prevention. We need to educate our young people about the dangers of heroin, texting and driving, suicide, and alcohol. I know that we can save lives, and that's what we need to do in our county. The only time a child should be in the coroner's office is if they're on a tour, never on a gurney. We also need to make sure that our office is one of compassion and availability. I will be available 24 hours a day for our citizens, our funeral directors, our state's attorney, and our police departments. And I'd like to end with a quote by Gladstone. "Show me the manner in which a nation cares for its dead, and I will measure with mathematical exactness the tender mercies of its people, their respect for the laws of the land, and their loyalty to high ideals." Thank you for your time today, and I hope I have your support to be the next Lake County coroner.
Thank you, candidate Cooper. Candidate Donworth.
Also, I'd like to thank everyone for coming here, of course, spending your Sunday out here with us. I just want to reinforce that I would be a full-time coroner. I would answer telephone calls and inquiries promptly. I would have an open-door policy with the citizens of Lake County. I would return morale and a positive working environment to the office. I would reinstitute some of the death prevention programs that the coroner eliminated, one of them being the child seat safety and installation. I would serve families with compassion during their time of need. With compassion comes professionalism. I would assist families with services that they would need at the time, at their worst time. Timely death notifications would be a priority, along with timely death certificates. By doing this, I would bring service and caring back to the office. My office would be a working office from the coroner on down.
Thank you, candidate Donworth. And candidate Rudd.
I have a prepared statement. Hopefully I can get through it in 60 seconds. For the preservation of a fair and just judicial system, it's imperative that the medical examiner, coroner, or pathologist remain independent officials and available to both the prosecution and the defense attorneys. Furthermore, while medical examiners and coroners necessarily work with police in the investigation of death and should have access to law enforcement reports, they should not be dependent upon police for all their information, nor should they be subject to pressure from police to modify their conclusions. In doing our duty, we must be viewed and treated as neutral experts in our field and not as prosecution experts or defense experts. Finally, I want to emphasize that we need to be protected from political pressure from government officials and from litigation directed at intimidating us in the determination of the cause and manner of death, as I was early in my career. We should not be penalized for providing testimony that proves helpful to the plaintiff or the prosecutorial defense. For our office has one mission, and one mission ultimately is to determine the truth on the cause and manner of death. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Rudd. Audience, at this time, please join me in a round of applause for Candidate